Hi, everyone. Welcome to Joseph's Fireside Chat series. I am Tom Dreyfus, CEO and co-founder of Josef, and thrilled to be joined today by Dan Hunter, the Dean of Law at King's College London and co-founder and executive chair of GraceNote.ai. Dan, really pleased you could join us.
Thanks, Tom. Nice to see you again. Such a pleasure to be here.
It is. Why don't you get us started by telling us a little bit about yourself? I'm actually going to preface that question with one thing that I thought about you, which is that you are almost uniquely placed to have a conversation with me about generative AI and the impact it's having on the legal industry because of a background that very few people in our industry share. So I'd love you to tell our audience a little bit about that.
That's super kind of you. Look, all that really we can say is that I've been doing AI and law for a really long time now, and every single one of my grey hairs seems to sort of remind me of just how long it's been. I took a look the other day that I wrote the first thing in AI and law that I ever wrote 34 years ago. So that really ages me pretty dramatically. I will say I was young at the time, but it was a long time ago. And a lot of people don't know that. I mean, there are so many instant experts on LinkedIn that whose AI knowledge extends as far back as November 2022 when GPT 3.5 was released to the public. So yeah, I've been doing it for a lot longer than that. Back when we weren't sort of thinking about transformer technologies, or even really very much around sort of neural nets, definitely not deep learning networks. And so I have a bit of a context around all of this. And I remember when we first met and you came into my class at Swinburne, and you were sort of showing what you were doing with Josef, and I was like, oh, it's great. It's really wonderful that these kinds of technologies, which was sort of where I started in AI and law, are now actually sort of commercially valuable and usable.
It is incredible how far things have progressed in a pretty short space of time.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was hoping to ask you about was that kind of arc of history of development from, I mean, we don't have to go 34 years back, but I'm more than happy to now. Is this moment a step change, or is it just a natural progression in the arc of technological development?
Yeah, I've been doing this for such a long time, and each time a new technology or a sort of a slightly different way of doing things came along, I kind of looked at it and went, is this transformative for law? And I remember early on thinking that expert systems and sort of rule-based systems and the kinds of things that you've been able to do with Josef, I sort of thought, oh, this is really the answer. This is the way in which we're going to automate law. We're going to make it much more accessible. It's going to be easier to use. It's also going to be consistent. All of those good things which we care about as lawyers. And then there were just sort of technological and management maintenance reasons that just meant it just sort of didn't work like that. And I don't want to say a little bit scarred, but I certainly got used to not saying, oh, this is transformative. This is incredibly disruptive. This is the end of the world as we know it. I actually do think with transformer technologies and large language models that this is the end of the world as we know it. There's a new world which is emerging. And I wouldn't ordinarily have said that, except for the nature of this technology. Every single paper that you read about someone doing something with this, you just go, how on earth is it able to do that? Like, what happened? And I think the people that built them, I know the people who built them, and they don't even really know why it works the way that it works. And yet we keep getting these use cases where it's like, good Lord, that's incredible. And so it is absolutely going to change. We don't know how it's going to change exactly, but I know that the entire edifice of legal practice as we currently practice it is going to crumble in some way. Where and how long it's going to take is obviously the most interesting question.
It is so refreshingly unlawyerly of you not to caveat the answer,
No,
to just
it's going to be different. Yeah, it's going to be different.
The world as we know it. What gives you that confidence? I mean, I love the confidence, but I want to know what gives it to you.
Because these things are general purpose technologies that once you start using them in intelligent ways and you get over the sort of the obvious risk problems, that we worried about hallucinations. Well, you can control for that. And then that's mostly a solved problem. Do we expect it to be able to write, a perfect brief, with a zero-shot prompt? Well, we sort of think that that's what we're going to do. You type in the prompt, write me a brief for this, but it's like that's not sensible. So various vendors will come along and go, okay, well, put a framework around that, or the context windows will expand, and so you can actually pour in all of the documentation and actually get it to generate that. But these technologies are just so powerful, and every vendor will say that. But these ones, genuinely are. All of the studies that when you go, okay, let's take a fine-tuned medical diagnosis model, MedPalm, and we'll compare it with the straight out of the box GPT-4, which it's not been trained on medical diagnosis, doesn't have access to medical case files, and like so GPT-4 is better at medical diagnosis than most humans, and better than a fine-tuned older model, right? So something happened at the scale point when GPT-4 came along. There's something about the parameter size, there's something about the training set size that actually dramatically changed the nature of this technology. And then all of these use cases are coming along, and lots of smart people are going, all right, can you use it for this? Yes, you can. Actually, that's really incredible. So then, if you look at the nature of the workplace, lawyers are very resistant to change. They're going to go, no, there's all sorts of reasons why we don't want this, or they'll, stick guardrails around it. But when human beings start using these models, they just get better, right? All of the workplace studies show they're better, stronger, faster. They're like the $6 million man. They're also happier, right? And so it's just like, okay, people are going to use it. There's all sorts of stories around I now use GPT to do, basically 90% of all the scut work that I've got to do for HR reports, writing an initial draft or a recommendation, all that sort of stuff. And it's just like, and that makes my life better. So of course that's going to change. I don't know exactly what it's going to mean to, what my job is going to look like, but lots and lots of jobs out there, certainly lots of legal jobs, are just, collections of tasks that actually large language models can do really, really well, because language is the stock in trade of lawyers. So it's going to be different. There's just no question.
I'd love to dig a little deeper on that last point about
Sure.
the role that language plays in making the legal industry, the legal vertical, kind of especially apt for disruption by this technology. One of the things I heard at one of the latest Microsoft keynotes was, it's been a long time working in legal tech that we were no one's darling. And then,
Nice.
at the Microsoft keynote late last year, literally the first use case to come out of their mouths was the legal use case. And that, I know that's a little thing, but it's also kind of mind-blowing if you're in this way that we're in this.
Yeah.
Why? Why is legal especially ripe, or the first use case, or whatever it is that they're saying there, which is something that makes legal, ready or different?
Well, I mean, I think so. Just every single thing that we do as lawyers is, at the end of the day, turned into work product, which is words. Right, like it's just we even at the sort of like the far end where like, oh, PowerPoint slides, like, well, it's just words and images and transformer technology. Large language models can do that without any problems, right? So
don't tell the management consultants.
No, absolutely. Management consultants are terrified. Bankers as well, right? They're hugely worried, right? Because so much of the sort of the crappy entry level jobs are banking are just sort of manipulation of PowerPoint slides and large reports and that. But so much of law is the manipulation of words in a way that actually, although we as lawyers, because we're very proud and egotistical, and it was really hard to get into law school, and getting a degree was really hard, and I've spent years and years and years honing my craft. And like, so much of it is just sort of like, take this, summarize it, put it into this chunk, charge a lot of money for it. That's a lot of legal practice, and large language models can do that. And so I think the reason why Microsoft or various other sort of players have gone, what, legal is ripe for disruption, is these models are uniquely good at language games, which is mostly what lawyers do. There are some problems around the sort of the cognitive or the knowledge model underlying the large language model, which in fact, of course there isn't one, but you don't have to worry about that too much for a lot of cases. And then you multiply that by the amount of money at stake, right? Like lawyers charge like wounded bulls. And so, okay, guess what? We can come in and we can disrupt that. Our CTO in Gracenote was a commercial lawyer, and he borrowed our large language model at one point when he was in practice, and used it to create Australian financial services licenses, and cut the effort of writing these 120 page documents down. I think it's normally like a 4-week exercise, and he did it in a couple of days, kind of thing. So it's just that, but yet the firm, of course, is still saying, well, it's worth $50,000, and that's where everything. So that will change, of course, but the combination of these things are really good at language games, which is what lawyers do, and lawyers charge a lot of money. Yeah, of course, we're going to see this is the area that people care about.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense when you put it like that. One of the things that you're capable of is speaking quite technically about large language models and about the way the technology works. You have a level of understanding that most legal professionals might not have, which means that someone might look at you and say, well, of course, he's going to be able to use generative AI productively in his work. He's a GenAI native. Is that what it takes to be able to use the technology, or what are the skills that a legal professional needs today to take advantage of GenAI?
So the core skill is the skill that lawyers have, right, and that human beings generally have, but lawyers especially have, which is language, right? I mean, so prompting is just programming with language. It's nothing more than that, and so the starting point, when I teach prompt engineering for law, or I teach legal generative AI, it's just to sort of say, look, don't fret about this. You need some core kind of methods where you start with the idea of treat this as a paralegal, treat this thing as an intern. An intern, you wouldn't expect it to come back with, you wouldn't expect them to come back with a perfect answer if you just said, write me a brief, right? And just say, no, give them some context, explain what it is that you're looking for, give them some examples of ones that have worked in the past, and then ask it to do that. And then also tip it at the end, right? Or say, take a deep breath. There are various little hacks that you can do around this, but the core observation is to just use language and talk to it as though it were an intern. And for reasons that just have to do with the way that they're trained, the scale of the data sets that they've been trained on, the training sets, and the way in which one particular technology, one insight that OpenAI managed to create a few years ago, means that they come back with these really extraordinary responses if you just treat it in that way. So that the core thing that what the lawyers need, nothing that they don't already have, right? Then there's a little bit of useful training, I think, and I do a lot of exec ed for law firms and for corporates in legal departments and that sort of stuff, and I teach my students this as well here at King's. That actually you need to understand what they're actually doing. So sometimes a little bit of technical knowledge is good, because all that it's doing every single time is predicting the next most likely token, next most likely almost word, based upon what it's seen in the past, right? And so then it will generate that, and it generates it token by token. Once you sort of understand some of those aspects, once you understand a little bit about word vectorization and why things work the way they work, and then once you start to understand what they're good at and what they're bad at, then you can go, okay, I can ask it to do this thing, and I'm confident that it will do a good job because I sort of know how it's doing what it's doing. The thing that I find is that a complete black box, don't worry about what it looks like inside, you'll be right, is actually a bad idea, because you'll ask it a question, you give it a prompt, and it'll come back and you go, why on earth did it do that? And if you've got a little bit of an understanding about it, so getting some familiarity as a lawyer with the very straightforward kind of material that sort of says this is how they work and this is why they work this particular way, and then a little bit of prompt engineering knowledge, and then that's enough. But honestly, you can become genuinely expert in this without knowing any maths at all, and also without spending more than a week monkeying around with the thing and reading a few bits and pieces. Obviously, there's lots of stuff out there that will help you with that.
I think that explainability piece
Mm-hmm.
goes as well to the change management piece for lawyers,
Mm-hmm.
where we have been trained. We are trained risk managers. We look at ways to control situations, and so a black box approach to technology is one that's not going to sit very well with most legal professionals. And so that ability to explain what's happening, acknowledging what you said earlier about some of these model makers not even knowing themselves how some of these things happen.
All of the model makers don't know how these things work, or what the sort of the. I mean, they know exactly how it works, but they don't know sort of what the capabilities are, what the actual limits of this are.
Yeah,
that's a profound difference.
It really is. And so, in the context of needing it to be explainable and worrying as we should about the change management piece, one of the things you said recently was that it is, I'm paraphrasing you here, riskier for law firms and GCs and corporate legal departments to not adopt generative AI right now than it is to adopt it. Yeah. How can that be?
So it relies upon an assumption that the nature of the value curve on this is exponential versus linear, right? So and everyone at this point is going, this is it, but it's really straightforward, right?
I get the exponential
curve. Right. It's exactly right. So the exponential curve looks exactly as you've done there. If it's a linear curve, it doesn't really matter when you adopt it. If it's just flat like this, or it's going up at a certain rate of increase, then if you miss adopting this thing by 6 months, well, you go on that same curve, right? And you'll be 6 months behind, but it won't be that dramatic a difference, and you can spend a bit more money to catch up. So being a fast follower actually makes sense if the value curve or the growth curve or the profit curve, whatever the y-axis that you're using, if it's linear, it doesn't matter very much. And actually, you should wait and have people flame out and lose a whole lot of money and then learn from their mistakes. You should, right? That's actually the best strategy. If the curve is exponential, then because it starts to asymptotically become vertical, right? It's moving towards a point where it's like just going up like gangbusters. If you miss it and you wait 6 months, you can't catch up. You just can't. Even if you're on an exponential curve, you're so far behind that all of your money, all of your clients, all of the profits have already been eaten up by your competitors who started before you. So the question then, and this is the only question in terms of business strategy, is do you believe that the large language models have an exponential growth value profit curve, or do you think that they have a linear one? That's it. If you think they have a linear one, well, good luck. In that case, don't invest now. Just wait for people to screw it up. If you think that it's got exponential, then the only appropriate business strategy is to invest now, because you have to get on board. Of course, it may be that in fact there's that's neither of those things. It could plateau, or it could actually, it turns out that large language models are completely useless and they don't give us any value at all. That I think is unlikely, but who knows? It's possible. That's the basis of it.
You're testing my math skills here to describe the shape of a different curve.
Well, they're only really. I could draw it on the screen, but I sketched it on the back of a cocktail napkin on the way back from a conference at one point on a plane. So I've stuck it up.
And I mean, no prizes for guessing where you're placing your bet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I've been doing this long enough that I'm like, I'm really confident that bet is that. Also, the other aspect is that the scale of the bet is not that big, right? Like, you just, all you've got to do is give all of your staff access to a private GPT-4 class model, of which there are now 3 or 4 different ones that you can choose. They're coming down in price. Give them a little bit of training, and you will be amazed at them picking up a use case and a pain point and going, oh, wow, actually, we can now do that in a quarter of the time or a tenth of the time, right? Any business that relies upon time billing where you can save that amount of time and improve your efficiency that much, that's got to be a winner.
It sure does. Dan, I feel like I could spend a lot longer learning from you. I'm always grateful for the opportunity.
It's always just fun to chat with you, Tom. Let's do it over a beer next time.
I really mean it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much again for coming on this fireside chat series. Dan Hunter, Dean of Law at King's College London, co-founder and executive chair of GraceNote.ai. We really appreciate your time and look forward to chatting again soon.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Tom.